Yeah, I've started the recording.
Started, right? Yeah, yeah. So, hello guys, welcome to Consult 101 Module 2 live session. So, I am Rohan. You would probably know by now. I am one of the co-founders of this club, and along with me, Ayush is one more co-founder. He's there in this meet right now.
Hi
So,
guys.
yeah. So, in case you haven't watched the previous videos, the Model 1 videos, they are all available on our YouTube channel, Case Club IIT Madras. So, please do watch it. That will cover a lot about the introduction part of management consulting. So, today we have with us two of our mentors, Nandini and Prashant Ravula. They have received actually very prestigious offers. Nandini has got an offer from Bain, and Rahul, as you already know, has got an offer from BCG. So thank you very much both of you guys to spend time with us. And like yeah, so today's session is divided into two parts. So in the first part, Rahul and Nandini would discuss about some of the tricks and tactics about how to solve a guesstimate, how actually interviewers like to see the exact structure and approach. And the second part will in which they will solve some of the guesstimates which were asked to their in their interviews. So that will actually give you a proper idea about what is the level which is expected in placements or internships. So yeah, let's start. So Nandini, according to you, uh,
Oh, okay.
what
So
are...
I thought something would come up. Am I
Oh,
audible?
okay. Yeah, yeah, you
Yes.
are.
Okay. So do you want me to explain how a guesstimate is solved or like general tips? I thought
Actually,
you'd
if you
probably.
can explain how a guesstimate is solved within first 2-3 minutes, that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay. So a guesstimate could be anything. Estimate the number of TT balls you can fit in an aeroplane, things like that. What you do is you kind of you really don't know how to solve this, right? You won't even know the number of things you could possibly fit in an aeroplane. But what you do is you kind of estimate the size of an aeroplane using small things. So you structure it down into small bits that are solvable bits, and then you add these together to finally get a number, an estimate, which is why it's called a guesstimate. Uh, I think we'll be solving guesstimates today, so you'll probably get a better sense of what a guesstimate is and how to probably solve them. I will tell you a few tips I think that you have to keep in mind before solving them. Again, Ayush, Rohan, should I tell the tips now or after solving guesstimate? I think it'll make sense for them to understand it after the guesstimate. It's up to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, actually, that makes better sense.
That
So,
makes
Rohan,
sense.
can you present your screen?
Yeah, sure, sure. 1 second.
We can start with the first guesstimate that Ravala is going to solve.
Is my screen
Yes,
visible?
it is.
Yeah, so Ravula was asked this question in his placement interview. So yeah, he'll be telling us how to solve, how he solved and his structure. So yeah, Ravula, over to
Okay,
you.
yeah. So the guesstimate, this particular guesstimate was asked in the first round of my Bain interview. So the guesstimate was to estimate the number of deliveries made by an Amazon executive per day, in a day. Okay. So what you do generally in a guesstimate is you start off by clarifying the scope of what you're supposed to estimate. Like there are different things that you need to consider. Most of us will directly look at number of deliveries and assume the regular package deliveries. But before starting your estimation, you need to know a few things. For example, like what vehicle is this particular Amazon executive using? Where is he operating? Is it in a city? Is it in a village? It makes a lot of difference. Uh, Also, how exactly, if you don't know, you can also ask your interviewer how exactly does the delivery model function. Do they take it, like usually there is like a one particular hub which is near a few, which covers some radius in a city, and that is how they deliver packages from the hub to all the customers around that hub. So that's the usual mode of delivery. If you don't know that, it's better to clarify, or even if you do know, it's better to just confirm if that is what they're also looking for. Another important thing is a delivery executive, according to my knowledge at least, not only does deliveries but also picks up returns. So are we considering this particular delivery executive? What all does he do in a day? Does he also take returns, or is it only deliveries that you want me to estimate? Okay, so all of these questions would be kind of necessary before you start solving. So that is what you need to do first. Try and clarify the scope. One particular tip or like a funda that you might use, which might be helpful, is to try and identify some keywords in the question statement itself, and then base your preliminary questions on that. So, like if you look at deliveries, as I'm just stating what keywords I can see. I can see the keywords as deliveries, deliveries made, basically deliveries made, Amazon executive, and yeah, per day if you want to see that as well. So when you look at number of deliveries, then your first question of whether we should consider deliveries or returns, that would be deliveries or returns should be considered delivery and return. If you look at Amazon delivery executive, then you want to know how exactly Amazon functions, and how this delivery executive is functioning, truck, bike, whatever. So in this particular guesstimate, we are looking at a delivery executive who's working with a bike. Okay, and the model is the hub model, which I mentioned. There's a nearest hub, which covers a radius of around 5-6 kilometers, and then the person just takes deliveries just picks up packages from the hub and just finishes all deliveries nearby, and then comes back to the hub and refills his bag and then goes back. Okay. Also, per day was another keyword that I mentioned. You want to know which day it is. If it matters in this particular guesstimate, you might want to see. I mentioned this preliminary question especially now because in COVID year there's a lot more deliveries that we were seeing when compared to the previous year. So I felt that could also be included. And yeah, the final fourth question is also just a clarification whether you want to consider are we considering the basic Amazon deliveries that happen through people like us, or is it some other kind of delivery? Just to confirm if there's anything else that an Amazon delivery executive does. Okay, so then our next step would be to structure the entire guesstimate. So what you need to do ideally is to have some sort of initial formula, okay, upon which you build up and then drill down in a structured and logical way. So the basic formula that I used is number of deliveries per day would be number of trips that a person makes, which I mentioned. One trip is basically him picking up things from the hub, delivering all these items, and then coming back. This would constitute of one trip, and then you multiply that with the number of deliveries he makes in that particular trip. Okay, and you can split each of these factors. So this is just a very basic initial formula that you start with, and from there you split each of these factors, each of these parameters into multiple factors. Number of trips again depends on the working hours of that particular person, and also the time per trip. In working hours also include any break time that the person takes, which generally they take some lunch break or some other breaks. Include that as well. Do not forget things like that. And time per trip. The way I did time per trip is, as I mentioned, the trip includes sorting or picking the things from the particular hub, going from the hub to one particular area where you have to deliver, and then you deliver it to the actual customer. The time it takes per delivery, as in wait for the customer to come, take his order, exchange order. If there's cash on delivery, take cash on delivery, confirm the delivery on your application, and then move. Okay, and then finally you return after you finish all your deliveries. You return back to the hub. So time per trip, I'd split into each of these sections, and then considered some time and then you consider some amount of time, whatever you feel is logical for each of these things. And when you're considering, especially when you're considering time per delivery, yeah, one second. I think it's not visible for me, but okay. Yeah, so the time spent to reach location and also time spent for delivery. Delivery again would, as I mentioned, there would be different times for delivery if you include cash on delivery or prepaid orders. This would cover your number of trips. And now for the number of deliveries per trip, this would depend on the bag that he's carrying. As I mentioned, he has to empty his bag and then come back to the hub. So your major constraint here is the bag size. Okay, so you try and estimate the bag size based on how much, what would be the bag size if he were to fit it on a bike. So based on that, take a volume. Then I also considered the packing fraction, because if you put some number of deliveries, you are not like, it won't completely fit the volume, right? It's not like water. So there has to be some packing fraction that you need to consider. And in the bag capacity, how many deliveries would fit? You try to estimate average volume of each parcel. One way you can do this is split them into small packages, medium packages, and large packages. Try and estimate how many small packages or how many medium packages, how many large packages are ideally ordered by you on a daily or weekly basis, and try to estimate if this is same for this is same for a wide variety of people, or if you want to make some changes based on that, based on how you behave. And then just consider some percentages of deliveries and their volumes. Just take an average volume of what you feel would be the average size of a small parcel or a medium parcel or a large parcel, and then calculate the total number of packages that he can fit in his bag. And then you have your deliveries per trip, then you have your number of trips. You can multiply these to get your final number of deliveries that they do per day.
Cool.
That's it.
Great.
I'm sorry if I went too fast, but most of it is clearly. I hope
I'll summarize it.
Slide.
I'll just summarize it, Rahula.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to point out how beautiful yet simple this structure is. It may seem intimidating at the beginning, seems a vivid flowchart, but I hope you realize by now that it's actually very simple and it's more of common sense. You see number of deliveries is number of trips into deliveries per trip. You can split the number of trips into working hours and time per trip. So it's easy. And just so that you do not get intimidated by numbers, I'll give you an example. Let's consider bag capacity. So you must be thinking what volume to take. So it's actually not rocket science. You can just I'm sure you must have all seen some delivery agent, like some Amazon guy at some point in your life. So you can imagine like his bag that is attached with the bike would be somewhere like 100 centimeters would be the length, some 20 centimeter would be the width, and around 50 centimeter would be the height. See, the numbers don't matter. What matters is that you are clearly explaining what your structure is, what your point is, and why you are doing this. Once you explain the volume, you can just assume some simple size of a small parcel, 20 centimeter by 50 centimeter by 10 centimeter, and you can say the medium parcel would be 2 times it, the large parcel would be 3 times it. So all I'm trying to say is don't get intimidated when you get into the structure. Try simple things, try logical things, and it will work out. That's fine, right, Rahula?
Yeah.
Great. I think we can move on to the next guesstimate, Rohan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Rahula, over to you again.
Okay, you want me to do this as well? Okay, fine. So this is another guesstimate. How many burgers does McDonald's make in a day? Okay, so again, this following the similar funda that I've seen. You can go back once again. I'll just look at the keywords so that people understand. Okay, sure. Keywords here that I see are burgers, McDonald's, and in a day. Okay, so looking at these keywords, if you look at burgers, then you need to consider. Your first question would be: Is this some particular type of burger that we are looking at? McDonald's makes a lot of different burgers. Are we looking at a particular type of burger that McDonald's is making in a day, or is it all different kinds? Again, when you look at McDonald's, you'll be like, okay, which McDonald's is it? Where is it located? And what kind of McDonald's is it? Some McDonald's are only takeaway, or some McDonald's can be on highway versus some in a city. So get these details clear. And then in a day, which day? Again, weekends usually tend to have a bit more traffic in McDonald's, a little more occupancy versus or a holiday especially would have more. So yeah, you can move on to, yeah. In this particular thing, again there is one thing that I missed was are we considering only dine-in or are we considering delivery or takeaway also? So in this particular guesstimate, let's consider a regular McDonald's outlet in a city on a regular day, not a particular, just a particular weekday, and all kinds of burgers on the considering only dine-in and takeaway. Okay, I think the structure again is pretty clear. If when you consider dine-in, you look at the total capacity. You basically when you calculating the number of burgers which are sold in dine-in per hour, you look at how many people come and how many people order burgers, right, in an hour, and how many people how many people order burgers in that particular hour. That would depend on your total capacity, which you clarified initially. Or if not, if the interviewer is like, you can estimate it yourself, just estimate based on your prior experience or roughly how many people could sit in that thing, and just if you want to further improve it, you could be like, there'll be few large tables, medium tables, small tables. This kind of segmentation is pretty simple if you want to do it. Otherwise, you can just take it based on your memory. Then
So
look at
I had a doubt here, like maybe others will have it too. When we consider an outlet, can we just simply say, like, by my experience, the McD that is in front of me has around 25 tables, 4 chairs each, so the capacity is 100. Is that fine?
Yes, that is fine. But if you want to go one step further, you can also be like, let's not take a particular example that I know. Let's take a regular McDonald's outlet. I would say that they would have some amount of large tables, some amount of medium tables, and some amount of small tables with a total capacity of whatever, 100, whatever you feel like is necessary. But I think the first way is more simpler. You can always do that as well. And your outlet capacity into fraction occupied by people visiting and sitting and eating, which is specific to dine-in, and your fraction occupied will again vary based on which hour it is. So now that we're splitting the entire thing into different hours, there will be few hours where the fraction occupied will be more, which is usually during lunch, dinner, and maybe some time during the snack time as well. Okay, so at these times you need to consider. You can either consider it as peak hours and non-peak hours, or split it based on. You can split the entire day into different segments of hours and then take numbers for that. Any way is fine. Keep it simple. Don't unnecessarily complicate it too much also. And number of people per table, as I mentioned, you can just take an average of what you think would be an average number of people per table at a particular time, and then again take an average number of burgers per table, actually. Per person. Yeah. You need to be careful. Again, like just now I made this mistake. I think when you're writing a formula, when you're seeing again number of people per table, and when you're multiplying it, you need to put per person. Otherwise, you might get confused, like I did just now, and put number of burgers per order or per table, right? So be careful of how you're writing the formula, and ensure that like all the numerators and denominators cancel out, and you get the final answer in the end properly. That is something that you should take care of. And again, in takeaway, again it's a similar funda that we've seen. You can take peak hours and non-peak hours. In peak hours, the one way you can do it is look at the time you need to prepare one order, which can be again split it into cooking, assembly, packaging, all that, and then get a rough estimate, and then see in 1 hour how many of these orders would be made, right? Again, in non-peak hours, this is a bit tricky. So one way simply you can do it is just multiply the peak hour by a factor of 0.25, 0.4, whatever you feel is ideal. Okay, so that is one way you can directly do non-peak hours, because it makes sense. Peak hours versus non-peak hours, the traffic would be half, maybe lesser, maybe more, whatever you feel is logical for MFT. And then just calculate your entire answer, and then you're done.
Yeah. So once again, I'd like to give just a 2-minute summary.
Yeah.
See, it was again very logical and more of common sense. Just consider dine-in, for example. You just have to, picture it in your head, and then consequently plan your steps. Let's say you picture a McD outlet. The next thing is you want to see how many number of people can it hold. Then you want to see how many of number of people, what is the number of people actually there, right? And then once you calculate that, you see on each table how many people are there, and one person will order how many burgers. You see the logical flow of events. So that's what Ravula explained, and yeah, it's actually that simple. It's more of common sense, and you'll get better at it with practice. That's all I wanted to highlight. By the way, this question was asked to one of our mentors, AKT, in his Nomura internship interviews. So yeah, you can gauge the level.
Yeah.
I'd like
And
to add a small point here, if that's okay.
yeah, sure.
Right. So Ravula explained it very well. Just in the part of takeaway, you see that there are two different ways we are calculating for peak hours and non-peak hours, right? In peak hours, it's time to prepare one order, and in non-peak hours, we're looking at the number of people visiting every hour. Now, the reason we're doing this is we have to figure out what the bottleneck is in each possibility, right? In a peak hour in restaurant, you're limited by the number of orders you can make in the cook station. Whereas in a non-peak hour, you're limited by the number of people who come into the restaurant. So you can't use a blanket approach for both things when there are different bottlenecks affecting different situations. So that's something important to keep in mind, which I just wanted to add.
Right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
right.
So we can, I think, move on to the next guesstimate.
Yeah.
I think Nandini was asked this guesstimate
Nandini,
in
yeah.
one of her interviews. Yeah. Nandini, you're on mute.
Thanks, Ayush. So this was a relatively simple guesstimate that I had. So I'll go with what Ravula said. The first thing you do is figure out what the keywords are in the guesstimate statement. You can see two keywords here, right? One is revenue and the other is a general cinema theater. Now, when you think of revenue, you will have to kind of list out what are the possible revenue streams of this cinema theater. So that will be your first preliminary question. The second thing would be when you look at a general cinema theater, as soon as you see a location involved or a establishment involved in your guesstimate, you need to ask what the location is because that can factor into the number of people who visit this establishment. So you have to also look at location. Now, the third thing a cinema theater might have is the type of movies that they show, right? You could have regional movies, you could have English movies, and that affects the type of people and the number of people that enter this cinema theater. So these are the preliminary questions that you have on top of the mind. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so these preliminary questions are yeah, okay, all right. Anyways,
Yeah.
you have the
I would like to apologize for that.
Yeah,
I had prepared that issue. My bad. Don't
okay,
focus
so
on it.
yeah, okay, I will repeat the preliminary questions again. The first thing you
Yeah.
ask is the different types of revenue streams. So off the bat, you will think of tickets and food, right? But ads is not something that you typically think of. So that's something that you may want to ask the interviewer beforehand itself. If the interviewer wants you to go ahead and include ads, you go ahead, else it's not required. The second thing you want to know is the location. You want to know whether it's a cinema theater in a mall or it's a beaten down cinema theater that not many people go to in these locations. So that's another question you want to ask. And the third is the type of movies that the cinema theater streams. So I was told that they stream all movies like English, Hindi, Telugu, everything. So it was just a regular movie theater in a mall. So we went ahead with that. The first thing you do is you look at revenue. There are three different types of revenues here: tickets, ads, and food. Now, I was not asked to look into ads, so I was just asked to focus on tickets and food, so I went with this. Now, at any point, it is best to use a mathematical formula to get whatever values you want. The simple reason being, it's a Mises structure, right? There's no way you can miss out on things when you put a mathematical formula. So the number of tickets is basically the number of shows per day into the number of people per show into the ticket price per show, right? It's a pretty straightforward calculation. And the ticket price per show is how you estimate, is what you estimate based on the location. So you know that tickets in a theater, they charge at a premium versus something in a separate establishment on its own. So you gauge your ticket price based on that. Similarly, you can count the average people in a hall as total seats into occupancy. Now, how do you do total seats if you know, I mean, if you've gone to a theater in a mall, you'll know roughly the number of seats, right? You'll know the number of rows, and you'll know the number of seats per each row. So it's a simple multiplication of those two numbers, and you get a total seats. And occupancy is the occupancy rate you could consider on a regular day. So that's how you do the number of tickets. Similarly, food is also done in a very similar fashion. You calculate the number of people who come into the cinema theater based on the number of tickets. So you can directly use that number and account for the cost that each person might pay and the fraction buying food, and then you'll have your separate numbers. You just add these two up and then you have your final value. So this guesstimate shouldn't take you much time. It's probably a 10-15 minute guesstimate. These guesstimates are not asked on their own. They're probably coupled with another question in the interview. So don't assume that it's a simple guesstimate, so you can take as much time as you want. They're very short guesstimates, so try to finish them off as quickly as possible. So that's with regard to this guesstimate. Ayush, you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add something. Yeah, as Nandini said, guesstimate is just a part of the interview. And regarding my first guesstimate that I did, it was not the complete interview. It was just a part of it. And later, I was also asked to roughly estimate how many deliveries a Swiggy executive would make, and how this would be different based on the parameters I mentioned in my structure. So that was the entire case interview. So a guesstimate would normally take you around 10-15 minutes, ideally, once you are somewhat proficient with guesstimates and solving those. Yeah, and after that, I think one extra tip I would want to give is try seeing each of your guesstimates as cases. So let's say now Nandini mentioned estimating revenue of a general cinema theater. Maybe when you're practicing with each other, after you solve the guesstimate, maybe put in something like try to think of it as a case and say, okay, your client is someone who owns a cinema theater and wants to increase his revenues. Okay, so what can he do? So now you looked at different levers, and you can think of good recommendations. You can try increasing ticket price, you can try increasing number of shows per day, you can try increasing average people, and so on. Right. So this is one way that will help you later on in other case solving as well. You'll be able to kind of think of recommendations and suggestions on the spot, even while doing estimates. Just a random tip. It's not exactly related to guesstimate solving, but something that can help you in the future.
Yeah,
I think that's good. We can move on to our last estimate for the day.
Okay, so this is
Sorry, Nandini. I just wanted to add this guesstimate was asked to me in my Nomura internship interview, and I managed to cup it very badly. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. On that happy note, I'll start this guesstimate. How many local trains are needed in Mumbai? So again, use the tactic Ravla mentioned. Take your keywords. You have two keywords here. One is local trains and one is Mumbai. Now, Mumbai is not a keyword you have much leeway with. It's a city. You know the exact place it is. You know the size. I mean, you don't know the exact size, but you know that it's a proper place, right? It's not something you can guess things about. So the first thing we look at is local trains. So are we only considering the trains? So I'm not from Mumbai, right? So I wouldn't know exactly what a local train is. So my questions would be, what do you mean by local train? Is it something that just goes within the city, or can there be some sort of intra-state transport as well? So that would probably be my question for local trains. And Mumbai, I won't really ask anything, because one of the things you have to know before you sit for a guesstimate interview are very basic things like the population of a city, population of a metropolitan city. So this is a number you have to keep in your mind. It's not something that you can guess in the interview. You can't say, oh, I assume, I think the population of Mumbai would be 1 billion. You can't do that, right? You have to, you should know that the population could be around a couple of crores. That's it. So that's what you have to do here. We'll start with the guesstimate. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that's the preliminary question, not much here. So the number of local trains, again, you use a mathematical formula, it being MECE. So the number of local trains is basically the total number of people traveling using local trains divided by the capacity of each local train, right? It's a simple numerator by denominator thing. Now the total number of people traveling is a separate guesstimate on its own. So again, you start with the total population of Mumbai. Then you can divide it into these various income categories. And under these income categories, you can further divide into age categories. Now, you know for a fact that upper class may not be traveling by local train, right? So you just ignore it, just take it to be 0. Again, upper middle class may also not be traveling much by local train, so you can probably take a 5%, or just probably take it as a 0. Now, lower class and lower middle class is the bulk of this train traveling population. So assume a percentage for these two and then go down. Your next level would be something like age groups. So even in lower class and lower middle classes, you will have the age group of 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and you would know that the most prevalent population in a moving train would be the working class, right? So that will have a higher percentage than someone above the age of 70 years or someone below the age of 10 years. So factor those in, and slowly you'll get a number for the total population traveling via local train. Now you can also look at the number of people that can travel in a train. Now I've never been on a local train, so what I'll do is I'll take number of bogies into capacity per bogie. I will also ask the interviewer if I can assume that whether a local train is similar to the trains I've seen traveling interstate or national, right? And I'll also know the seating capacity of each compartment and the number of compartments in a bogie. So using those values and based on my experience, I will come up with a number which makes a lot of sense. So let's say you have a bogie. I think in my experience traveling a train, I think there might be eight compartments. By compartment, I mean those two seats, those two, I don't know how to explain it, like those two seats facing each other against the window. You have a small little compartment. There'll be 8 of them. And each compartment, given that it's a local train and there are a lot of people traveling in it and it's pretty stuffed, I think I would take around 10-15 people per compartment. So then I would multiply it and then I'd get the number of people traveling in a train. So this is how I do this estimate. And I will come up with the value based on this mathematical formula. That's it from my side.
Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, I hope this one was easy. I hope even I thought it was easy back then, but yeah. So, I hope the structure is very clear. It was fairly easy, I think, and we can move on to tips. So,
Okay.
Nandini.
Yeah. So I will throw out a bunch of tips. But
I'm so sorry. I'll just add one thing. Whatever doubts you guys have, please ping me personally, or you can just unmute yourself and ask here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you guys have any doubts right now, you can ask right now also, like before we start the next structure. So
Yeah, so I have a very general doubt. Is it advisable to go as deep as possible? Like in the McDonald's question, can we go into the different types of tables that we have, or is it advisable to keep it simple?
Okay, so usually keep it simple, but also not too simple. Like ideally, I would say go down 2 to 3 levels in your structure, and not more. If it's like a full-blown guesstimate interview where half an hour is just reserved for guesstimate, then you can go further. But if it's just understand whether it's like a 10-15 minute guesstimate or if it's a longer guesstimate. If it's 10-15 minutes, then just don't go 2 to 3 levels, more than 2 to 3 levels further in your guesstimate. Now, like this example, I think we looked at first level that you can see is fraction of population and number of people that can travel in one train. Then you go down to income classes and then age classes, right? This is like 3 levels that Nandini mentioned. I mean, I don't know if you could go further, but anyway, if you had a guesstimate where you could somehow segment it further, then it's up to you. But try to finish it off within 10-15 minutes and not take too long, because then interviewer gets bored.
And not just that, I think Ravula was spot on when he said don't go too deep, because you never know whether the interviewer expects you to spend 30 minutes on the guesstimate or 15 minutes. He can ask you to stop in the middle and then continue on with something else. So it's good to wrap it up as soon as possible.
Yeah, but also don't keep it like too simple. Just take some value for fraction of population, take some value for number of people can travel in train, just multiply and give the answer. Don't do that also.
Okay, that's great. So someone has pinged me his doubt. So it's actually focused towards Ravula. This guy says regarding your Amazon executive problem that you solved it from the supply side, like from the Amazon perspective. Can we solve it from the demand side, like number of orders per person per day, and go deeper?
Okay. So yeah, that is
Yeah.
something that you can solve for. But I think then again, if you go by the demand side, it will become much more complex. Let me think. It will be total number of orders by total number of delivery executives. So you have two separate guesstimates, one for your numerator and one for your denominator. I think that's what you mean by demand side. I'm not sure if there's a simpler way. If there's a simpler way that you can look at it in a demand point of view, then yeah, go ahead. As long as it's simple, makes sense, and is messy, you can do any approach that you want. Yeah, also disclaimer, all these approaches that we discussed was just what we did or what we think is one way to solve it. There are again different ways. There might be better ways to solve it also, if you can think of it.
Yeah, in fact, if you would have watched that case interview crack video, there are two methods, I think, top down and bottom up. There are two types of approaches. Similarly, supply and demand side are there.
Yeah.
You have to pick up the simpler one. Here, number of orders per person per day is relatively difficult to calculate as compared to the
Number of orders per person per day
So
would
it's a
be
matter
easier,
of
but then you'll
identifying
have to see how many delivery executives are there overall, which is, I think, another guesstimate of its own.
Yeah.
So why solve two guesstimates? And
Right.
Yeah.
So
Also-
I think that comes with practice, right?
I mean, yeah, just look at your initial formula, see if which one is easier to estimate if you have multiple approaches. And initially, I think, yeah, a lot of times you'll have this doubt which approach to follow and all. If you read a lot, then you'll see that people say top down, bottom up, supply, demand, all of these frameworks that they use. But then and it's common to get overwhelmed initially, but then once you keep doing cases, you'll realize that one particular approach is a good fit for the particular problem that is asked.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I think next question Nandini can take. Nandini,
Yeah.
how do we decide what kind of assumptions can be or should be made by us, or can we ask it to the interviewer without looking dumb?
Yeah, so a trick that I used was I would always say that this area is not familiar to me, and I would then put a number, and then I would ask the interviewer whether number makes sense. If the number doesn't make sense, the interviewer will state so. But the key to guesstimates is not the numbers itself, but your structure, right? So in most cases, no matter what number you take, he or she will just ask you to go ahead with it. So that was my experience. There's no way you would look dumb unless you kind of just assume a number which is completely off, or you don't take the interviewer's say while writing down the number. That's the only way things could go wrong. So if you engage the interviewer, I don't think it should be a problem.
Great. So we have one more related question. What is the equivalent of a whiteboard in an online interview? How can we effectively explain the structure of our solution in an online setting?
Yeah, so which is why your structure is super important, okay? Because back then you could actually show your piece of paper to the interviewer, he'd know what your structure was, even if you couldn't convey it properly. Whereas over here, you will have to, start with one section of the tree, go down the tree, and then go to the next. So you can't really show your interviewer your piece of paper, which is why a MECE structure is so important. The interviewer can understand math equations properly, but he won't be able to understand something else which is not really familiar to him. So, which is why explaining a structure is very important. You have to explain it slowly and clearly.
So communication skills play a great role here.
Yeah.
A much bigger role than what it would have in an offline set. Yes.
Great.
Yeah, just to add on, when you do this, when you have a mathematical formula, that's why I mentioned keep it very simple initially, just 2 or 3 like this into this, that's it. And then even if you want to split it further, just look at then we'll split fraction of population. Be very clear when you're communicating. And once you finish one branch, summarize again, saying that, yeah, this is what I've calculated for fraction of population. Now I will move on to number of people that can travel in one train, and this is how I'll do it. So it's very important to keep communicating with the interviewer so that they don't get lost in between. And put mini summaries whenever possible, whenever you finish a particular calculation or particular section.
So just to solve this particular question, actually, us and the mentors have recorded guesstimates, like exactly in an interview setting. There would be no one presenting a screen, or there would be no PPT, and like I or Rohan will be the interviewer, and one of the mentors will be solving a guesstimate. So we'll be releasing that YouTube playlist very soon, like maybe 1 hour after this session. So do go through it, and once you start practicing with your case group in a similar way, I think things will become much clearer. I have 3 to 4 more questions coming in, so I think we can take them. While explaining the answer, should we go top to bottom or bottom to top, or it depends on your approach?
So you have two approaches, right? One is the top to bottom and the other is the bottom to top. So it's based on your approach that you figure out whether you want to explain it top to bottom or bottom to top. I would always go from top to bottom, because at the bottom you may have many small compartments that together sum up and make up the whole. Whereas if you go from top to bottom, right, you will start with 2 buckets, then you'll go down to 4, then you'll go down to 8 probably. So it's easier to convey your things to the interviewer, as Ravula had mentioned. It's because you don't have a piece of paper here again. So unless your communication is top notch, a top to bottom approach will always help explain what you're doing to the interviewer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have one last question here again. Could you please let me know whether we can include the repetition of trips by an average train in the last question? Repetition of trips by an average train.
Okay.
Nandini?
So, yeah, wait. Could you go back to the question, the main question, what it asked for? How many local trains are needed in Mumbai? Yeah, perfect. You would need to include the number of repetitions or trips a train makes. It could possibly be 2 or 3 in a day, and that's something you should also include in your guesstimate. That's a very good question, in fact. So the answer is yes, in short. You should.
So to conclude, we can say that a guesstimate can have multiple answers. There's no correct or wrong answer. It all depends on your approach and how well you structure. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ayush, is it okay if I can ask one question?
Of course.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So as we are speaking about the structuring part, right? As far as I can think of, we can either walk the interviewer through what we are thinking, what our thought process is, be dynamic about it, change a bit of things here and there, or take a minute or two, ask the interviewer for a minute or two, and then structure your thoughts properly and be fluent about your explanation. Which one do you suggest, and which one would have more impact?
The second. So we all, I think, went with the second approach. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ravula.
Yeah,
Is that the case?
always.
Yeah, so structuring your thoughts actually helps you in communicating your final structure better, because you have a nice tree you can go by and explain to the interviewer. If you're thinking of things on the fly, you may not be able to convey it as well. So I advise you to take the minute, structure it down, and then convey it to the interviewer.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, always take a minute whenever possible. If you have the option, always take a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So do we have
So
any
in
more
our
questions?
And just another thing to add there. It is possible sometimes that you miss out on few things in your initial structure, and the interviewer might point out something. So you can always add them into your structure later on. It's fine.
Okay, so
That is also
backtrack
fine,
to
and
the starting
it's
point
good.
and then go through it.
Yeah, I didn't get you.
Sorry. So if interview adds something in the beginning, go backtrack it and then solve it again. That's what you're saying, right?
Not okay. So you ideally you won't need to backtrack, because when you're explaining the structure itself, you are asking the interviewer if it's fine, and if the interviewer is not fine, they'll tell you to consider something else. Like they'll either hint or they'll tell you directly, and then when you understand what they want you to add, you can add it there itself in your structure, because every single layer of your structure that you're explaining to the interviewer, you kind of ask them if this is fine and you can go further, or you at least look for some acknowledgement that yeah, you can go on.
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Prashant.
So basically the videos will be sharing in 1 hour, you will be able to understand better. Like if you watch those videos, like they are like we have tried to replicate the like exact interview scenario over there. So yeah.
Okay. I think we can move on to the last section of our today's session, and
Yeah.
that's common tips that the mentors would like to share with their experience. So, Nandini, you might want to go first.
Yeah, all right. I'll quickly run you through probably 7 or 8 tips that I have in mind. The first one is you should kind of remember very standard numbers that are asked in an interview, right? The first thing is population of India or the world. That should be something on your mind. You should know it at all times. Second is income classes. You should know the different types of income classes present in India, basically high, medium, and low. And you should also have a rough idea of the percentages that these comprise of the total population. The third is urban and rural split. Typically, we take a 30-70 split, but I mean, it's up to you really. The fourth is you have to have a general sense of the population of a metropolitan city. Again, in my case, the Mumbai case, this was important, right? So this is another number that you should keep in mind. Any other numbers, if you remember, Ravula?
Age.
Yeah,
Age
age.
splits.
Yeah, age splits, yes. So that's another bucket that you should keep in mind. Yeah.
Can you give an example of a split? What do you mean by split?
Okay, so when you think of, for example, in the train guesstimate, you had to break it down into income splits, right, to understand the percentage of people who might use a local train. There you would have a high income, a medium income, and a low income. Now you know that India as a country has a higher shift of people in the lower and medium than a high income. So you would take the split to be around 15 or maybe 15, 40 and 45, something like that, or 15, 45, 40, things like that. So that's how you figure out a split and then explain the case after that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Remember standard numbers. The second thing is make sure you're quick at math, because guesstimates require to be able to solve math problems very quickly. And if the interviewer catches you making a mistake, that's not going to look nice, because that's one of the things that they test in a guesstimate. So ensure that you're fast and accurate while solving a guesstimate. Someone has raised their hand. I don't know if. Okay.
My bad. It was a mistake.
Okay. So second tip is practice quick math. Third is, so when you solve a guesstimate and you're in many problems, you'll have to work with population of India and go from there. You could either stick to the Western nomenclature or the Indian numerary system. So you could stick to million, billion, or lakhs and crores. Stick to one of them. Don't use both, because the interviewer will get confused and you'll get confused more. Now, one thing I did was I kind of converted it to scientific notation. You don't have to do it, but I did it. It made it easier for me to convert it back to the Western notation. Because when you say 10 to the power 8, it's easier to say it's around 100 million than it is to say in crores or lakhs. So it's something which you can do quickly and you can get the number out quickly. So that's something that I did. Now, the fourth tip is, it's not a tip really, it's more like how you solve a case. If you're unsure about a guess you're taking, don't hesitate to ask the interviewer if the number makes sense. So if he's cool with the number, he'll say go ahead, because all they care about is the approach. If they are not okay with the number, they'll ask you to take another number instead. So it's a win-win for you. You don't have to go with a number that may not even be close to the actual value. Always engage the interviewer in a guesstimate, in any case for that matter. Now the fifth tip is round off your numbers wherever possible, because these numbers could get extremely ugly. So it's okay if instead of taking 85, if you take 90, that's not a big problem. It's not going to affect your value at all. And they care about the approach, so round off. The sixth thing is, use wherever possible, try to use math formulae. They're easy and they get the job done, and they're simple also. It gets the interviewer to understand what you're trying to say. The seventh thing is, a good way to understand what a number might be is to look at bottlenecks. So I was talking about, I think in Ravula's question, you had to see what the bottleneck was to understand the number. Whenever you see a bottleneck, go with the bottleneck, because that will restrict your number. So that's a number that you should consider. And yeah, the eighth tip is, this is more like when you're practicing, there are many times when you just think of guesstimates. So guesstimates are not something you have to search for online to solve, right? You can just come up with a guesstimate and practice them on your own. Practice them on your own and go back and check the real values. And then try to see where you might have gone off or what you may not have included. So that's something that I also did, and it kind of helped me. Anything else? Yeah, that's it. Those were my tips.
Yeah. Just one thing I'll add about the point regarding rounding off. Rounding off is usually fine, but don't be aggressive in rounding off, because like you just can't take random everywhere. You can't round off and make it too simple. Sometimes depends on the interviewer again. So always when you're rounding off, ask the interviewer if it's fine that you're rounding off this particular calculation, just to ensure that that they don't get pissed. That's it.
You sure on mute, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying that was a very comprehensive compilation of your general tips, Nandini. Nice.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I think we can wrap. Or do you have to add anything, Rohan?
Yeah, like I would just like to say one thing, like with like minimal preparation what I have done. So basically like asking preliminary question really like simplifies the guesstimate for you, or else like initially it might seem very big, but like sometimes the interviewer expects only one small part of that guesstimate. So
Yes.
yeah, that also helps.
Yes. Not only simplifying the guesstimate for you to solve, it also shows the interviewer that you're capable of thinking at different levels for the same problem, right? Like, but you can showcase that you know, or you know that there are different aspects to this case, and you are asking which one to solve specifically. And that's in general a good quality of a like a aspiring consultant, that you focus on specific problems, or you go with the you be easy, and then you choose the particular specific thing that you want to focus on, and then do it properly. So it
Like,
Yeah,
shows that
and
you have that kind of attitude as well.
right. And the third reason is when you're actually on the job as a consultant, you will have so much information at your hands that you need to go and ask the customer. You can't go and ask the customer for every data possible. The customer will get annoyed. So you have to know in advance what the most important parts are for the case, and then go and ask them. So in an essential way, preliminary questions gets you to practice what might be most important in the case and what you should ask in the beginning itself. So it's important on the job as well.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And just to end, we have prepared a mini guesstimate book which has like around 8 guesstimates sold in a similar fashion that we showed you. Moreover, as we already mentioned, we'll be releasing a set of YouTube videos. So please go through it. You'll get a much better idea of what happens in an actual interview setting, especially when it's online. So yeah, wait. Someone is asking a question, raising your hands. Kandra, Pawan, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, I have seen in the day one zero book, point zero book, that the emphasis on guesstimates is been reducing over the years during the interview. So, like, we have to prepare on several frameworks, right? So, like, how much importance should we give to the preparing on guesstimates? So, you're on
Nandini,
mute.
you're on mute again.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. So guesstimates on their own may not be as important as, the other things. But the thing is, when you do a market entry case, you start with a guesstimate. So you have to estimate the number of, things that they can sell in order to gain the revenues. So other types of cases have a guesstimate in them. So they're not exclusive. So you definitely have to, practice guesstimates. There's no way around it.
Yeah. And as Nandini said before, guesstimates are something you can do on your own. So you don't need someone to interview you for guesstimates. So you can keep solving them as puzzles. Just treat them as fun puzzles and solve them in 5-10 minutes whenever you want.
Yeah, in fact, I think solving estimates is a very good start to your case solving practices, and it will help you develop a structured thought process as well. So, yeah, with that, we can wrap the session. We'll be having 2 live sessions next weekend, one on profitability cases and one on market entry cases, where we'll discuss the framework and a couple of examples for each of them. So do join that as well. And with that, we'll be closing Consult 101 Module 2. Thank you so much, guys, for attending. Do share your feedback. Thank you. Thank you, mentors.
thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Nandini and Ganesh.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye then. Bye everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Bye.